Hi everybody. I am so excited to do this catch up with Fenella and Rowena because you'll recognize Fenella's name from my book, Beyond Diagnosis, and she offered me several case studies from the students she has in her school. Fenella is the head of school and Rowena is the assistant head. And between them, they have so much experience working with children with special needs and challenges. And I'm really excited to catch up with them and see what's going on with their work now. So, Fenella, I was wondering if you could start off by just giving us a recap of the story you sent to me about Jordan and so how it's developed and where he's up to now.
Yeah, okay. So I met Jordan, as you all know, if you've read the book, when he was like a young man, sort of going towards adulthood, and he was very, very, very troubled. So it was very difficult actually to work with him to begin with. Um, and a lot of the sessions were hard work to begin with, until at some point he heard something. He heard something that helped him understand that even with the diagnosis of autism, he can actually access a level of freedom that he didn't think would be possible for him.
Mhm.
So he, like, if you think of him as a young man, he was very, very caught up in his, I would call it OCD kind of way of thinking. Everything had to be the way it was, and he became very, very withdrawn before he started his sessions in Way Up. Um, Increasingly experiencing himself as a problem
Mhm.
in the adolescent years, as opposed to his childhood years, where he was actually quite okay. And then in the sessions, he discovered more and more that he doesn't have to be the slave of his thinking. I would put it that way. That he doesn't have to follow every thought that jumps into his mind and obsessively follow it. So it was actually a really beautiful development to see how he came to terms with who he believes he is, because I don't know whether he's discovered who like who
Right.
he actually is in his depths. Um, but accepting that his way of thinking is slightly different to what some other people might experience, and just getting into that acceptance really of not needing to follow every thought that is in his head, and also not needing to judge every thought that is in his head, and not needing to judge himself for it. So I haven't seen him in the last 3 months. So it was before the summer holidays that I last saw him, because he's now in professional formation. So that is a success in itself, that he managed to take that step. And the last that I heard of him was sort of along the lines of, yeah, I am actually okay. I don't have to take every thought that I'm thinking seriously. Um, I can actually live with the thinking that is in my head. Um, and at some point, he was speaking about tuning it. Made that he made that, kind of like saying, well, I don't have to put them all loud. I can make them softer, and I can play with that. And so there was just a lot of self-acceptance. I wouldn't say self-love yet, but definitely getting there.
Wow.
Definitely experiencing more freedom,
Mhm.
and feeling more at ease with being in this world, which for a lot of young people on the spectrum that we see. I mean, we've got quite a few, don't we? Yeah. In the school. So
It's amazing.
I don't know.
Such good news.
Yeah, it's lovely, we had a very good last encounter, and I said, if you need help in your formation, if you need further assistance, call. And he said, yeah, definitely will. And I haven't heard anything. So
Great.
and usually when the parents don't get back in touch, it means that things are just running smoothly,
Nice.
going
Very
okay.
nice. Right. So you said you have other kids in the school with ASD or on the spectrum. Could you maybe tell me some of those examples?
Yeah, we will use fake names in
Yes.
order to protect the or no names, but we will know who we're
We'll know.
speaking about. Who we're speaking about. So we've got actually quite a few. The school is quite full of people on the spectrum. So if we begin at the bottom, we've got, as in the youngest, so our 12-year-olds. And they've only just been with us for 2 weeks.
Mm.
And actually, there's that
Because as we're
beautiful
speaking,
thing. I don't know whether I told you yet.
I should say, as we're speaking, the school year has just started. So it's for people watching, that's why you've only
Yeah,
just had it in 2 weeks. Yeah. So how's it
exactly.
going?
We're 3 weeks in now.
Mhm.
It's going really.
Cheers, isn't it? It's good fun.
Yeah. So I don't know whether I told you that I had that beautiful encounter this morning with one of our 12-year-old autistic, or somebody with autistic tendencies. She's not fully diagnosed, but tendencies have been diagnosed. And she also has a very, very big ADD problem. So her thoughts will just wander off. And we had a French lesson today. And at the beginning of the French lesson, actually, all four of our more autistic kids couldn't focus on the lesson. They were all over, but not with me doing what I was doing. I teach them French as well. So at the beginning of the lesson, I drew loads of little beings onto the board. And I said, I'd like you to imagine that those beings are your thoughts. There's heaps of them. And they were all suddenly very attentive. So the moment you start speaking about thoughts and about who they really are, their attention actually comes. Do you experience that?
I think yes. I think that would have been a good thing had I done the same thing in the English lesson today. I had two of them again for English later on, and they were still very far away. And I think
So just listening to you say that, it gives so much hope because if that was never ever possible, then you'd be like, oh gosh, how on earth are we going to help these kids? But then to see that it's possible for that they can focus. So
Yeah, I'd like to just quickly finish that story. It's
yeah.
not going to take long because it actually says a lot about how we work and why it works. So I had that thing on the board. Then I drew a field, like as in a circle around some of those thought beings. And I said, look, if this is the field of French, which is where all your thoughts should currently reside, they shouldn't be hopping around. They should all come into the French field because that is where the food is right now. So if they're hopping around elsewhere, let's not get angry with them. Let's not beat ourselves up about it. But let's invite them into the field over and over and over again. And at the end of that French lesson, that particular child, you will know who I'm talking about, came to me and she said, you know how I always draw in the lessons? And I said, mm-hmm. And she said, it's when my thought horses go wild. And then she said, but now I know I can call them back. And so that was so this is the kind of way how we work with them to help them understand you're not a victim. You can love your experience of your thinking whilst inviting your thoughts to do what you would like them to do at a current moment.
Wow.
So that it's just like,
I think it's a very important experience for them as well, isn't it? To feel that sense of I don't have to judge myself, because you can see sometimes, and I had that experience in English, and I didn't think to do that, and you could see the self-judgment coming in as soon as they couldn't do it. And I think if you can rescue it with something like that, then they suddenly feel they're back in the space where, yeah, it's okay, and I'm okay the way I am. I just need to remember that I have free choice in what I'm doing. And I think that's
So that makes me think of something. A lot of a lot of the traditional treatments, if you like, therapies to help kids with, these kind of labels are often coming from a place of either telling the parents or even the kids that there's something wrong with their brain, that their brain is broken somehow. And I was wondering if any of the kids who've come to you, if they've been told that. I mean, has it ever been a challenge for you to kind of persuade them that there's actually their brains are beautiful, and they're not broken? Is that something you come across a lot?
You want to answer that one?
I think it's everyone, isn't it?
Yeah.
They basically all come in that state.
Yeah, I think there isn't one that I haven't.
But the beautiful thing is that they leave in a very different state.
Right, right.
So what we're experiencing, like now with the experience of the school running for a while, is that they come with that heap load of self-judgment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm broken, I'm useless, I will never be able to do it, I'm a failure, you can't fix me, don't try and fix me. And some of them get really angry when they feel that somebody wants to fix them.
Mm-hmm.
So what we say is, sweetheart, you don't need fixing.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with you. You've got thought patterns, thought habits. And yes, maybe your brain is adapted in a way that you have a bigger tendency of thinking along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't make you broken.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't make you at the mercy. It doesn't put you at the mercy of your own thinking.
Mm-hmm.
It still puts you into that beautiful position where you can become aware of yourself being the beautiful being that you are.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean that is something we tell them daily.
Yeah, I think
daily.
it's important as well because the self-esteem gets so low. And just to try and help them to get into a space where they're aware again of that, because I think so many of them don't have that awareness at all. Or by the time they get to us.
Mm-hmm.
So
they're so much more perceptible or perceiving when they are in that calm state of mind. So it's kind of like a positive kind of getting the wheel turning in the right direction, as a matter of speak, although I don't believe there is a right or a wrong direction, but getting the wheel turning into a state of fully accepting who I am, relaxes the mind in a way that they have a broader we like speaking about the fishing net, and we like saying, so okay, look, you've got a fishing net with which you can catch thought, and the more relaxed you are, the bigger your fishing net is going to be, so you're going to catch more of a good catch. But the more relaxed you are, the bigger the loops of the fishing net are going to be. So all the horrible thoughts will just sort of whiz through.
right, nice,
nice.
Yeah.
And that's an image that works.
I think that works quite well with them, doesn't it?
So one of the things that I've been looking at when I'm thinking about neurodevelopmental disorders, or so-called, is this idea that we all our brains work differently. Yours and mine work differently as much as, someone with a label or a diagnosis, their brain works differently. Some are going super fast, some are going slower. Everybody, I mean, I actually said this to Dr. Bill Pettit one time. I said, if there's a spectrum, that means we're all on a spectrum to some degree. Because if it starts at 0, then that means everybody's on it. Otherwise you've got to decide it's going to start randomly somewhere in the middle. Then who decides that, right? So I can't quite picture it in my head yet. It's kind of like an idea that wherever we are on that spectrum, like maybe that goes this way. And then this way, there's the degree to which we understand how the mind works. And so if you plot somewhere where there's an optimum place for both of those things to come to. So whether your mind is going super fast, and you're in a low mood and you don't understand it, it's not going to be functioning well. As much as when you understand it and you've got a super fast mind, then you're going to be more efficient, more productive. Same as if the brain is going slower, it doesn't function cognitively like maybe the average kid. But if you understand that, you can be as successful as you can be at that place. Does that make sense? Is that how you see your kids?
Should I? Yeah, you go first. I go first. Okay. So the way we see it is like we always draw it kind of like a half circle when we speak about the spectrum. We say, okay, look, this is the whole spectrum of human experience. So some of us have a tendency towards taking our thinking more seriously and having more repetitive thought, whereas others of us have less of that so strong tendency. But if, let's say, I'm here, which means I have less of that tendency, but I get into a lower state of consciousness, I will actually fall. And it's so interesting to talk to the young people about it, where a lot of our 18 and 19-year-olds will agree. Actually, I develop autistic tendencies when I'm in a low level of consciousness. I develop things irritate me like they would my friend who is on the spectrum. And then you have kids on the spectrum who will say, actually, I found myself so relaxed that things that used to be a big issue for me are not always a big issue anymore. So
I think, and it's something we see, or something I see very often, the more relaxed the child, the fewer of those tendencies they will exhibit. It's just like day follows night almost. And yeah, I mean, I've got two children of my own who are also on the spectrum, and you can see when they're in a relaxed state, you don't notice it. That you kind of, because they're high functioning. And as soon as they feel judged or threatened, then it all comes crashing down, and suddenly they're quite a long way on the spectrum, and you can't work with them, and you can't then reach them in the same way, and everything you say seems to just be sort of shut out by this wall of, this is my thinking, and you're not coming past it. But get past that to, you are a perfect human being, you are whole, and suddenly they're reachable, and then you can do almost anything with them.
Yeah, and I think particularly them understanding the principles and understanding how we create reality helps them to ease out of the more narrow states of mind as time goes by. So where we might begin a school year with a lot of issues for a lot of the children, usually we end the school year on a very different tone.
Yeah.
And I do think, it has to do with the fact that we really live this experience of I see you. The teachers who work here, we're really constantly reminding each other, helping each other when one of us goes into a lower state of mind, so that we can constantly reconnect to the child on the truest level.
I think that's, I mean, to me, that's one of the most important parts of the work is actually always, no matter what the child is doing, no matter what the challenges are, is always them reconnecting with the child on that level. Because then you can reach them, and then they will start, even on whatever level they're capable of producing, they'll start producing. And as soon as they feel heard, as soon as they feel that you've actually seen them, then they're receptive, and then they will start to work with you. And then it doesn't matter essentially what they're capable of doing academically, but they are then in a state when they're engaged, they're trying, they're motivated, and then that's when the magic starts to happen, I think.
Yeah. And we've got a lot of images to tie it back to the principles. So we use a lot of metaphors when somebody does get into a state where the world seems like a huge challenge, or where they get into a lot of self-judgment, and the world narrows down on them, where we use the metaphor and then we give them space. So one of our favorite sayings is, you can think that way. You're allowed to think that way, but you don't have to think that way right now. And then we give them space. And usually it takes 10 minutes.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
10 minutes and they shift. And that, with people on the spectrum, is not long.
No.
10 minutes is nothing.
Right.
Wow. I also think I think that lovely image of being able to unplug your thoughts is a really beautiful one, and it's because it's such a concrete image. I think that works quite well. It's like you can unplug.
Yeah, we sometimes say, okay, look, you're that beautiful being. You're plugged in onto so many levels of thinking. You can unplug. If you want to, just unplug. And sometimes they will. We've got a space where they're allowed to withdraw if they need it. And sometimes they will go there and be like, I have to unplug at the moment.
So we've talked quite a bit about autism. I'm guessing you have kids in the school with ADHD, because something you just said reminded me of some research that I read when you were talking about the school year and how, going through the school year and things changing. And this piece of research, I think it was originally out of Iceland, and they noticed that the kids who were getting more diagnoses with ADHD were the kids whose birthdays were at the end of the year, right? Because especially when kids are much younger, I know your kids are mostly teenagers, but like little kids, like in first and second grade, there's a huge gap or distance in development between when kids are younger. So if you've got kids in a classroom who are, almost a year younger than the kid they're sitting next to, the comparison is like, well, this kid can't sit still and this kid can. It's not a brain function thing. It could be an age difference thing. And so I thought that piece of research was pretty fascinating. So I was just wondering if you could talk about your experience with ADHD, or kids who've got that label or showed up with that diagnosis in your classrooms, and how you handle it.
You want to go?
I think it's a path. It's a path that's quite a slow path, but it builds, doesn't it? I think that's something. It's something you see results in over a period of time, and for me, when I work with a child like that, one of the key things is to keep them from self-judgment when they can't do it, when their attention wanders, and always to offer the feedback. That's good. Well done for what you have produced. Let's keep trying to remain in the zone. That they're coming away from that feeling of self-judgment, and so often they've come to us with a huge sense of self-judgment because they haven't been able to produce what they're expected to produce, and we're to try and keep them out of those fields of thinking.
I'd go as far as to say, this is horrible, but I'll say it anyway. I think ADHD and ADD has more to do with self-perception than with an actual problem in the mind.
Absolutely, I agree.
We see kids come who have been labelled ADHD. They come with Ritalin, and they come, like oh, I'm useless, I can't concentrate. They come with parents in their luggage who have a lot of fear about them being a failure. They come with reports from their old schools that basically say this kid is a failure. So far, every single one of our students, apart from one who was on Ritalin, stopped taking the drug when they came, as in after a while of being here, with the effect that they work better than when they started. So the self-judgment element with a child who is experiencing ADD or ADHD is by far bigger,
Yeah,
I would say, than the actual problem that they are coming with. Because once they understand those images that we use, the one with the thought horses that are galloping away, or the one with, oh, we've got so many creatures that we've invented for them, they can shift away from having that self-judgment into realizing, oh, okay, kind of like the zoo in my head has a habit. But if I just learn to love the creatures in that zoo, and I learn to tell them when it is time to run wild and when it is time to not run wild, and people will accept and love me no matter what. I mean, we do. We send them out when they can't control themselves. We say, "Hey, go for a walk in the park. We've got that beautiful park in the back of our school building." So we will send them out and we will say, "Okay, right now it seems like you're having a lot of trouble dealing with what is in your head. Go outside. No hard feelings, no consequence. Just go outside and come back when you feel that you're more in charge." And they do.
They do, and they always come back.
And they always
come back. Which is, and I think they feel relatively secure. And I think what's beautiful is that they feel secure that we're not going to judge them. That it's a space they come into where they're not judged, and where we keep faith with them. And I think that's really important that they really experience at a quite a deep level.
Yeah, and I think they also know that we really believe that they are unbroken.
Yeah, that's very important.
And that strong conviction of ours that then goes into the communication to all the other kids. So like somebody will leave, and at the beginning of the school year, children will be like, oh, is he going to get a consequence now, when they don't know how we work yet? And then we say, oh, no, actually, he just needs to take care of his inner zoo animals for a while. That's okay. He'll come back once they're fed. Or she'll come back once they're fed, and he or she will be okay, and you'll see. And then you actually even have the class like cheering, not outwardly, but celebrating the fact that their peers are sort of winning in the inner zoo game.
Wow.
It's a beautiful process to see that keeping faith, actually, and to witness it among the other students as well. There is a sense of care and understanding as a community. I think that is slowly beginning to really understand itself, and you see that develop through the school year, which is beautiful. And where there is sometimes judgment, to try and get the students to understand among each other that they don't need to judge, and that their peers are also not unbroken. And
that's really beautiful, because I mean, I've always wondered if ADHD, like you said, it's not so much about there being a problem in the brain or in the mind, but it being very speeded up thinking. And I know when my thinking gets speeded up, I'm not as focused or efficient or productive as I can be when it slows down and it's more, more ordered and a quiet mind, like Sydney Banks would always talk about, it's looking for a quiet mind and how it feels. So I think it's beautiful how you're pointing the kids to their own resources and their own resilience, to rely on themselves and each other is just beautiful. It's amazing. Yeah.
I right now I feel like taking the computer and running to our outside. We've got that thing that we've created with the children, which is a 3D big 3D model of the. We should really take the computer and show you and walk through school with you quickly. Should we?
I don't know what it is you're talking about, so a picture. Yeah,
we'll send you a picture or something. So
right.
basically what it is we've created like an inner well. So you will see a golden well in a big, big 3D thing. And there's an inner well with a golden tree next to it. And we say everybody has that inner well. It's the well of peace and it's the well of self-love. And then the children made loads of little streets that lead away from that well.
Mm-hmm.
And they made the street of anxiety, the street of anger, and the street of self-judgment. And they made beautiful little houses. So it's a big 3D model.
Wow.
And whenever some of the kids experience inner turmoil,
Mm-hmm.
we will actually walk to that model with them. And we will ask, how far away from your inner well
Oh.
are you currently experiencing yourself to be? Are you at home or are you wandering the streets? And if you're wandering the streets, what you need is love and acceptance of all the others who are at home. So that is how, so far, we haven't had a single case of bullying in our school. Because the children understand that when somebody is walking one of the streets that are leading away from the inner well, they don't need judgment. They need the other kids to call them home. And I think that is, a very important part of how we work, and the whole neurodiversity. We're all neurodiverse.
So I was wondering if we could just end by, do you have any specific stories of a kid, struggling and like, happy ending? Like, let's see how, that this actually, the progress is, because it sounds like such a beautiful environment. I'm sure it has.
We've got one.
Complex.
Yeah. We've got another one. You want to share one, and then I share. So we've got two, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
And don't say the real name of the kid.
Yeah. I'm going to think of, okay, give me a moment to think of a name.
So you
call him Alan.
Alan, good.
Okay. So when I first got here, and he was already a fair way along the path, I think, wasn't he? He was very much my nemesis in many ways. He challenged me in so many different ways, and he was always asking really the most awkward questions, looking to bring me down as a teacher, I think was one of his great entertainments, and seeing how far he could push things, and also quite negative about all sorts of other people within the school as well. And through the year, it was very beautiful to see his development, because he slowly. How old is he? He's now 16.
16,
yeah. And he's just gone off to England to join a football team, a football school. But his self-image, when I first got to know him, and he was quite willing to share. Once he got past you're a teacher and you're my enemy piece, he started saying, yeah, well, you know what, I'm just useless, aren't I? And I always just do everything wrong, and it was constant. And every time he did it, I was like, actually, you know what, you're not useless. You're a fantastic person. You can write really well. You can do this really well. You can do that really well. Just keep your focus. Keep faith in yourself. And actually, as he left, he chose to stay in the school for an extra 2 weeks before he left. After the summer holidays, he came back to us. He had his place in his British school, but they start a bit later. So he said, well, can I come to you and spend the last 2 weeks?
Wow.
I'm in Switzerland at school with everybody. And he did, and he was wonderful in those 2 weeks, wasn't he?
I mean, he was wonderful.
He
Towards
was
the
he
end
was
of the
wonderful.
school
Yeah,
year.
absolutely.
Generally, he's grown so much.
Yeah.
He's become such a well-reflected, calm, beautiful, seeking conversation kind of person, where he used to be very self-judgmental and judgmental about other people.
Yeah.
And he was, I mean, he was slash is on the spectrum. So yeah.
But very much that coming from a place of total self-judgment, I think it was constantly, yeah, well, I'm rubbish and I've got no hope, I've got nothing to offer. To a space where he's actually really super confident in who he is.
Beautiful, beautiful soul. Really,
Yeah.
really lovely guy.
It's so good to
Love him
hear.
to bits.
Yeah.
So, and the one that I would wanted to share, let's give him a name as well. We'll call him. Give me a name. We'll call him Michael.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, Michael is 14 years old. Michael came to us a year ago. He came because he could not deal with school at all anymore. Blockages, crying fits before he had to go to school, not being able to deal with all the, like sensory input, not being able to work, not producing at all, feeling very, very unhappy. The family had him in osteopathic treatment, and the osteopath said, "Oh my God, this system is so tensed up." Right. And just before the summer holidays, I got a voice message of his mother saying, "I just wanted to share with you that we went to the osteopath with him last month. And he said he has never seen a system more in balance. Wow. He no longer needs any of the assistance osteopathically because everything has come into balance. He has grown in self-confidence. He has become one of the highest achievers we have. He can verbalize his needs. He can verbalize his needs towards his peers. He can say when he needs peace or quiet. And we just had a bit of a hiccup at the beginning of this school year because we uncreated his safe space. So for the first week, he tried to cope with that, but then he communicated and he said, "This is not going to work. This is too much sensory input for me. I cannot deal with that well. And I am afraid of falling into old patterns and I don't want to fall into old patterns. Can you please adapt so that I can feel my new self again?" And we did. I didn't share, did I? Yeah. So that's why we changed it. Yeah. And so we recreated a part of the school directly once we heard that he's struggling with that. We made sure he has his safe space again, and now he's back into. So he is very aware of what he needs in order for his brain to be in a relaxed state. He is also aware that he doesn't have to take every thought seriously that crosses his mind. He is also aware that he is at the creational well of his experience. Right. And at the same time, he realized, okay, this is something where I can feel the sensory input for the neurodiversity of my brain is just a bit too much. Yeah. So please, can we adapt there? Whereas the old version of him would have just withdrawn and, that would have been it.
That is so amazing to hear, because that's kind of what I was saying about spectrums this way and well-being that way. It's like when you understand how the system works, like he was able to, I don't know, to get in touch with his wisdom, to know what he needed. So it's got nothing to do with intelligence and IQ and cognitive abilities and that. It's like when you understand how something works, then you can be at your optimal performance and well-being that's possible for you. And then that is mental health, right? Like Sid Banks said, mental health is contentment, it's like connection. That's amazing. Yeah.
And I think it's very much the same as with the story with Alan. Because the moment Alan realized, and he took leaps in this school year of realizing how we make sense of reality. And the moment he really realized that he is the creational power, experiencing life via the vehicle of thought, that was when he shifted. We got the most beautiful relationships with him out of it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, this has been such a great conversation because I think it's so inspiring for parents and for other teachers, to know that there are alternatives, that, just because a kid is struggling and they've been given a label, or the doctors want to medicate them, or whatever is going on, that there is so much potential and wisdom and innate resilience. It's just all those beautiful words. It's just like, I'm so glad that we connected, and to have it as like a little eye into, what you guys are doing, the work you're doing is absolutely inspirational. So I really thank you for your time, and just like, wow, I just can't wait to, hear the next, the next installments about the things, the great things that you're doing. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.